your testimony that those allegations are categorically false?
Unequivocally, categorically false.
So there have been no occasions during your tenure when FBI personnel were unable to promptly reach you?
Absolutely not. You can ask my entire workforce. They hear from me at every single hour of the day, as do these great gentlemen here, as do the men and women of the interagency and state and local law enforcement and the White House.
Categorically false.
Unequivocally, categorically false.
That's a real exchange from a real Senate hearing this week. The director of the FBI shouting at a sitting U.S. senator on live television. A few minutes later, that same senator asked Kash Patel one simple question. What happened next wasn't just tense, it revealed something about how this FBI director handles scrutiny. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what was, and wasn't, answered in that room. And why it matters far beyond one hearing. I'm going to walk you through this chronologically, the claims, the denials, and the parts of the record that don't quite line up. No shouting from me. Just the facts, clearly laid out. Let's set the scene. Kash Patel was confirmed as FBI Director earlier this year, a pick personally championed by President Trump. He came in as a Washington outsider, better known for his media career and political loyalty than for a background in law enforcement leadership. That background made him a lightning rod from day one. Supporters called him a reformer. Critics called him unqualified. This week, both sides got new ammunition. The trigger was a report from The Atlantic, alleging a pattern of excessive drinking, unexplained absences, and behavior that reportedly concerned current and former FBI and DOJ officials. It's important to say clearly, these are allegations, not proven facts. Patel has publicly denied them, and has filed a defamation lawsuit over similar claims. That lawsuit is still pending. So how did the FBI director respond when a sitting senator brought this straight to his face? That's where it gets interesting. The exchange happened during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, where Patel appeared alongside other law enforcement leaders for routine oversight testimony, the kind that happens every year. Except this one didn't stay routine for long. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland used his time to press Patel directly on the drinking allegations, and on whether FBI personnel had ever struggled to reach him. Patel's answer was immediate and absolute, unequivocally, categorically false. That's a strong denial. But the next question is where the temperature in that room really changed. Here's the thing about a flat, total denial like that. It leaves no room to maneuver. If even one detail in that Atlantic report turns out to be accurate, the entire denial collapses, and that's a high-risk answer. Van Hollen didn't let it go. He asked Patel to take what's called an audit test, a standard alcohol screening test used by active duty military members when questions like this come up. Patel agreed instantly. "I'll take any test you're willing to take," he said. Sounds decisive, right? But watch what happens the moment the questions shift to something Patel didn't expect. Van Hollen's next question was about leaks. He asked whether Patel had ordered polygraph tests on his own staff to find out who was talking to reporters. Patel's answer this time was more layered. He said he personally hadn't ordered any polygraphs, but that the FBI follows a standard internal review process for leaks, one in place for roughly 30 years. Here's where it gets complicated. Multiple news outlets have separately reported that more than 24 FBI staff members were, in fact, given polygraph exams during Patel's tenure, described by sources as an effort to identify leaks. To be fair to Patel, there's a real difference between him personally ordering tests and the Bureau's standard process producing them. That distinction is exactly what he leaned on. But that wasn't the only exchange that got heated. Minutes earlier, things had already boiled over, and that's the moment most people are talking about, the one you just saw at the top of this video. Patel didn't just deny those claims, he went on offense, calling them baseless reports and turning the accusation back on Van Hollen, referencing unrelated claims tied to the senator's own past statements. For a few seconds, both men were talking over each other. It's the kind of moment that clips well online, but it's worth slowing down to ask, did either side actually answer the question? The honest answer is, not really. It became about credibility and tone, not evidence. So if the drinking allegations and the bar tap claims are contested, is there anything in this hearing we can actually verify independently? There is, and it involves a trip to Italy. Later in the hearing, a senator asked Patel about a trip he took to the Winter Olympics in Milan, specifically what it cost taxpayers, and what official work it accomplished. Patel's answer: the FBI and DHS are responsible for securing major international events involving Americans, the Olympics, the World Cup, the Super Bowl. Roughly 250,000 Americans traveled to Milan, and he said the trip helped secure the extradition of a wanted Chinese cybercrime suspect. That's a legitimate function of the job. Major events genuinely require this kind of security coordination, and extraditions of this kind are difficult to arrange. But that's only half the story. What happened next on that trip is where things get more complicated, and it's backed by something more concrete than a denial. Separate ethics complaints filed against Patel allege that during the same Milan trip, he was photographed at the U.S. men's hockey team's medal round game, drinking with players and posting celebratory content on his personal and official accounts. To be clear, attending a game during an official security trip isn't automatically improper. Security officials are often present at these events as part of the job. The real question raised by the complaints is about optics. Now here's where all three threads, the drinking allegations, the polygraphs, and the Milan trip, start to connect into a bigger pattern. And it's a pattern that goes beyond just one hearing. In each case, Patel's response followed a similar shape, a strong, absolute denial, followed by a pivot, either attacking the credibility of the accuser or redirecting to a different accomplishment. That pattern isn't unique to Patel. It's a common defense strategy for any public official under pressure. But it does mean this hearing resolved very few specific allegations, one way or the other. What we can say with confidence: the allegations remain unproven, Patel's denials remain on the record, and the polygraph testing of staff appears independently corroborated by outside reporting, regardless of how Patel described his own role in it. Before we get to why this hearing actually matters, it's worth asking one more thing. Is this kind of clash normal for an FBI director, or is something different happening here? FBI directors have faced hard congressional questioning before. Robert Mueller and James Comey both sat through tense oversight hearings on surveillance powers, investigations, and public trust during their tenures. What's different here is the subject matter. Those past clashes were almost always about policy, how the Bureau used its power. This clash was about personal conduct, whether the director himself could be trusted at his word. That shift matters. Oversight of policy can be resolved with documents and testimony. Oversight of personal credibility is harder to settle, and it tends to follow a director for the rest of their tenure. So why does this hearing matter beyond the headlines? Because of what it reveals about how the FBI is actually being run right now. The FBI director isn't just a public face. He's responsible for coordinating leak investigations, managing tens of thousands of agents, and maintaining the trust of Congress, which controls the Bureau's funding and oversight. When a hearing spends this much time on personal conduct instead of substantive policy, like the Section 702 surveillance reauthorization also on the agenda, it signals that trust between Congress and FBI leadership is genuinely strained. One senator even noted during the hearing that he hadn't personally been briefed on the proposed 18-month extension of that surveillance law, despite it being one of the year's most consequential national security decisions. That's the part almost nobody is talking about, and it might matter more than any of the personal allegations. Here's why. Section 702 allows U.S. intelligence agencies to collect communications involving foreign targets, but it inevitably sweeps up some American communications too. Its reauthorization is one of the most closely watched civil liberties debates in Washington. If lawmakers are distracted by personal conduct disputes, fair or not, that's less time and less political capital spent scrutinizing a surveillance law that affects millions of Americans' privacy. That's the hidden impact of hearings like this one. They generate viral clips. They rarely resolve the underlying questions. And the policy work that affects everyday Americans often gets pushed to the back burner. And this clip didn't just make headlines. It's already reshaping how people talk about the FBI online. Within hours, the exchange was being clipped, captioned, and shared across every major platform, by outlets sympathetic to Patel and by outlets critical of him. Supportive commentary framed Patel as standing firm under a politically motivated attack. Critical commentary framed the same clip as evidence he can't handle basic accountability. Same video, Two completely different stories. That split is actually the clearest sign of how polarized trust in federal law enforcement has become. So where does this actually go from here? Let's talk about what happens next, because there are three realistic paths. Path 1, the defamation lawsuit Patel filed moves forward, and a court eventually rules on the underlying facts, which could either vindicate him publicly or validate the original reporting. Path 2, congressional oversight committees request additional records, travel logs, internal communications, or leak investigation files, which could surface without needing a courtroom at all. Path 3, and probably the most likely, this story fades from the news cycle within a few weeks, unresolved, the way most hearing controversies do, until the next flashpoint brings it back. But there's one thing that could change that timeline entirely, and it has to do with who else is watching this closely. Congressional oversight of the FBI isn't just a Democrat versus Republican story. Members from both parties have historically pushed back when they feel a director isn't being straight with them, because the Bureau's credibility affects prosecutions their own states depend on. If more senators, not just one, start asking these same questions in future hearings, that's the signal to watch. A single tense exchange is a headline. A pattern across multiple hearings is a real institutional problem. Now let's bring this all together, because there's one core takeaway that explains why this hearing went viral in the first place. Here's the honest, unembellished summary. The specific allegations against Kash Patel, the drinking, the bar tab, the El Salvador claim, remain contested. He denies them, and is pursuing legal action over similar claims. What is independently documented is the polygraph testing of more than 24 staff members, and a hearing where the FBI director spent more time defending his personal conduct than discussing one of the year's most significant surveillance reauthorizations. That gap, between the clip that goes viral and the policy question that doesn't, is exactly what this video set out to show you. The loudest moment in a hearing room is rarely the most important one. So here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know your answer in the comments. Should Congress prioritize resolving personal conduct allegations against agency heads before voting on major policy like Section 702, or should oversight of surveillance powers move forward regardless? Drop your take below. If this breakdown helped you actually understand what happened in that hearing room, beyond the clip everyone's sharing, consider subscribing. We do this every week, cutting through the noise, labeling what's fact and what's analysis, and giving you the full picture. Thanks for watching. We'll be tracking this story as it develops. See you in the next one.